I welcome you all to the webinar on careers in architecture. We are on the air from the green and compact campus of Mysore School of Architecture along the Lingambodi Lake, surrounded by verdant landscape all around. I'm architect D.S. Ramakrishna Rao, Dean and Design Chair at the Mysore School of Architecture. Over the last 40 years, I've been seriously involved in teaching, and I have a firm by name Desiraju Associates, which has completed 35 years. I'm come to a point where I can now exercise my passion being involved with the Mysore School of Architecture. I have with me on the platform Professor Sapna Shivkumar, our principal. He has a master's in architecture and a management degree, and is our founding principal and has 2 decades of professional experience and is passionately working on heritage for further research. I start with a message from our trustees, the trustees of Mysore School of Architecture. In the heritage city of Mysore, inspired by the cultural traditions, we decided to set up the School of Architecture. And having completed 7 years today, 2 batches, 1 batch is already graduated, the second is there. The trustees are proud to have faculty, cosmopolitan faculty from all over India, and who are as passionate as the trustees, as our principal. So I welcome you all once again. Today's program will lead you from seriousness of the profession, public office, right down to the point where we'll talk to you about admissions and the whole process of becoming architects. Our first panelist for the day is architect Leena Kumar, with over 3 decades of experience based in Bangalore, operating a firm by the name and fame of Kumar Consultants. She is from a background of professionals and nationalists and is very, very seriously involved in community building. The feather in her cap is she is the chairman of the Karnataka chapter of the Indian Institute of Architects and has created an awareness, activities and academics under the flag of the Indian Institute of Architects. Friends, listeners, parents, students, I will now pass on the mic to architect Leena Kumar, who's going to tell you about practice and in the process, how do you hold a public office and get on with it. Architect Leena Kumar.
Yes.
Please, Leena, the forum is all yours.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Rao. Hello, good morning, everybody. It's always nice to interact with youngsters. You're the future of our country, and it's quite exciting to always to meet you and to talk to you. Before I begin to tell you a little bit about architectural practice, I must begin with saying one of the best decisions I've made in my life is to become an architect. Through my professional career as an architect, I've met people, I've traveled across the country, I've traveled outside, which I would otherwise not have done. So it's a great exposure also, being an architect, meeting different people. I come from the generation of architectural graduates of the 1980s, and that really was the era of the Beatles, of music, of dreams. And more than 30 years in architectural practice, I still continue to work, I continue to grow, and I continue to enjoy it. And that's what architecture is all about. It grows on you, it never leaves you, and you just enjoy it more and more as time goes on. We have a country of about 135 crore people, and in this large country, the number of registered architects with the Council of Architecture is less than 1 lakh. So really, there is a dearth of architects in our country. But what we really need is architects who understand architecture and who also understand the requirements of what needs to be delivered to the end user. So as students, you're aspiring to be architects. You must know that one day, when you finish your architectural degree and when you become an architect, you will be designing structures for human use. And thereby, you will be responsible for the safety and reliability of the structure in a group of consultants as part of a team. But even more important than that, and something that's hardly understood by the public and by many people, is the impact of architecture on human lives. So as you design buildings, you'll find that a building, it sits on a street, it sits in a city, it sits in a nation, and thereby it forms a part of a streetscape. And that streetscape impacts the mood of people. These buildings that you design is really it's not like a piece of art. When you have art, you buy art, you like it, you don't like it, you can discard it, you can change it. But when you talk about architecture, you're really talking of a very large physical space that is meant to stay and is meant to be experienced. And that really is architecture. It's a lot of hard work, but it's worth every second of it. So if you really understand architecture, and if you really have to understand the essence of an architectural practice, from now on, if you really walk down a street, and you would have walked down in the course of your life through different streets in different cities, towns, and villages, and you would have found that there's some streets in some places that you like to keep going back to, or you like to keep revisiting. And these are perhaps streets that give you a positive energy, that a street that you like for reasons that maybe till now you have not consciously analyzed. But if you do from today, and since you're aspiring to be architects, if you really start walking down streets and try to understand why is it that some streets appeal to you, why is it that some streets give you a very positive feeling about it, you'll find that architecture has a lot to do with it. You'll find that there's certain buildings that appeal to you on that, the way it's designed. They don't have to be large, they just have to be, well, that's really for you to discover as to why you like certain spaces. Even if you're not talking of a street, let's say you go to your friends' houses or your own house, and you'll find that there's some houses that you like more than the others. And if you start consciously looking as to why it is, you really begin to understand what architecture is all about and what architectural practice is all about, and the impact of it on people who occupy those spaces. So, if you look at our papers today, you open the papers and you find, newspaper headlines screaming about violence, screaming about, corruption. Architecture has it has a part to play. Of course, it's not the only part, but it certainly does have a part to play. Because if you're surrounded in a space that's very positive, chances of you having negative feelings are less. It's certainly not the only thing, but it does have a part to play. And that really is what architectural practice is all about. It's about what you convey to the end user, and it's an extremely responsible profession. And by that, really, it's a very exciting profession. Because imagine having the capacity to really influence people, to influence citizens, to influence how everyone really views life and how you enjoy life. And if you really look at life as saying, if happiness is really the end goal to it, and happiness is not really easy to achieve, it's a state of mind. So if you look at that and you see the spaces that you live in, you'll find that they both do have a lot of relationship. They're both very closely related, really. The other good thing in an architectural practice, when you really start becoming, when you really open an office and you start an architectural practice, you can be the decider of how big or how small you want your firm to be. You're at the steering wheel and you're really steering the growth of your office. It depends on how much work you're willing to put in. It depends on how much you want to network. It depends on how fast you want to grow. And you decide that. That's one of the beauties of an architectural practice. You can step it up, you can step it down. And unlike most professions, architecture is boundless. The only limitation in architecture and in the practice is your imagination, it's your dedication, it's your perseverance, and your integrity. And being boundless, when you say architecture is boundless, it has its greatest strength by being boundless. It also is a great weakness by that same virtue. Strength because it has the power to transform lives, and weakness because it allows the unscrupulous to get away with delivering substandard buildings. So it's a double-edged sword, and if you look at it in a very positive way, it's a great place to be in. So if you're creative, as students, you just finished your school, if you're creative, if you're technically inclined, architecture is a great place to be. With a little patience to learn the nuances of the profession, architectural practice is a very satisfying one. No 2 days are the same, no two clients are the same, and no two designs are the same. So you never really get fed up of architecture. It's continuously evolving, it's continuously exciting. And as you keep working, you keep learning more and more about spaces, about the impact of spaces, about materials, about technology. It's never ending, it's always learning. And by that virtue itself, I think it's a great profession. I would imagine that you are all capable of being passionate about your career to come. And architecture is about passion. It's about using both sides of your brain and all your senses. So you've got to see, you've got to feel, you've got to hear, you've got to experience, and you use every aspect of your brain and your senses in the practice of architecture. You also need a lot of psychology, so if you like dealing with people, you understand the psychology of people, that's a great help. Culture, sociology. So it covers a very wide gamut of interests. And so there are many directions that you could go in, and there's a lot of freedom that it gives you to choose what you want to really focus on in the architectural practice that you want to pursue. After 35 years of architectural practice, I'm still working and I'm still enjoying every moment of it. And I can tell you it is one thing that I have never regretted as a person and as an individual. So to all of you who decide to do architecture, I welcome you into this field, into this great journey of building, designing, and impacting, creating. And we're really looking forward to a younger generation who also can decide what Indian architecture is. If you look at other fields of art, you have music, you have art, and in every sphere, really, there's a definition of what Indian art is or what Indian music is, but not as yet about Indian architecture. And that's a great space for you to feel, to understand, to start from the beginning and make a great career out of it. But as a practice, it's great, and I welcome all of you to begin your journey with architecture, and I would think it's something that you would never regret. Thank you.
Leena, that was a great curtain raiser, and questions have already started coming in. We must try to get to answer them. My next panelist is an out-and-out educationist academician, but with lots of practice. From chemistry to PhD in architecture from IIT Kharagpur, I present to you Dr. Harimohan Pillai, a very seasoned educationist, seriously involved in many institutions, including the School of Planning at Vijayawada and a variety of institutions all over the country. He established 2 decades ago the Artist Studio in Kerala, which is actually passionately going ahead with the academics and exposure to architectural education. Friends, I present to you Dr. Harimohan Pillai. Hari, it is all yours.
Thank you, Professor Rao, and thank you, Architect Leena Kumar, for that wonderful introduction to the learning of architecture and the profession of architecture. I would like to add to what you ended with, saying that what I would like to add is in architecture, one doesn't grow old. Now, this has to be one very important attraction for people to consider architecture as a profession. Now, why one doesn't grow old is something which I will talk about today in my presentation. Once you enter into architectural education, become an architect and start your practice. So about practice and advantages and some pitfalls, but your continued perseverance takes you forward. About this, Architect Leena Kumar has already explained. I'm going to touch upon one particular aspect of this profession, or rather this discipline, which was not very popular during our time. I also belong to the same generation of Architect Leena Kumar. That is, I studied in the 1970s architecture from IIT Kharagpur. At that time, the idea of doing research in architecture was unheard of. We had not even heard of any architect holding a PhD degree. And very few architects who entered the practice really wanted to go back to the school to either do higher studies or get into teaching. So there was also a shortage of teachers those days. We had the same old teachers teaching year after year, different batches of students. But over the period of years, over the last 30, 40 years, suddenly there has been, I would say, a glut in this profession called teaching. Maybe because too many institutions have opened up in every, and we also know that we really need many more architects in our country of 140 crore population. So there are many, many people who are joining teaching, and there are many who are going into research. So I am going to talk about research and teaching as a great opportunity. Instead of continuing to talk about this opportunity and about the field, I would like to share my view in the form of a presentation, and I'll keep talking in the background. Research and teaching as a great opportunity. I was a practicing architect. I started my practice after graduation in 1979. In fact, when I had joined in first year in 1973, Council of Architecture was a baby. It has just become 1 year old. So I was told that by the time you graduate, Council of Architecture is the one who will give you a license to practice, because till then there was nothing called an all India basis license to practice. It was the Council of Architecture established in 1972, which recognized this profession of architecture. So I started my practice in 1980 armed with the license to practice from the Council of Architecture. And I was enjoying my practice. I worked on many sites and teamed up with some of my colleagues and did a lot of projects. I was in Delhi for some time, then came to Bombay. But it never occurred to me that I should do teaching or research. Like me, there are many who perhaps it never occurred to them that they should get into teaching or research. So what I learned over a period of time after that, I have put them together in the form of tips and tricks to get into teaching, which is a great opportunity for today's young generation graduate architects. Let us take a look at the relationship between teaching and research. Is it necessary to be a researcher to teach? Do all teachers have to become researchers? This is a question which we have to ask ourselves. Primarily because architecture is actually a profession. You design buildings for people and get it constructed. So where is the question of teaching through research, this is something you can wonder. If you're an architect, if you have several years of experience, all that you need is to teach how you are practicing. So that is one question. So because this possibility is there, we know that we have several hundred visiting faculty members in all schools of architecture who are actually practicing architects, who perhaps have never had any higher education or higher degree. But there is a definite relationship between teaching and research, which we can understand by looking at all other disciplines other than architecture. What is this relationship? I would like to call it kind of a yin and yang type of relationship. Both complement each other. That means that if you are a teacher, you should also be continuously doing research in what you are trying to teach. Not only what you are trying to teach, but also what you have learned from your practice as an architect. So I'm going to address these issues. So let us go back to school and see the mind of a student who is studying architecture in school. In school, not only in our country, but all over the world, somehow it is the very idealistic approach to architecture which is taught. Somehow a kind of an image of an architect is created in the mind of students, that practicing architecture is like playing God. You are like God, like you have to become a skilled craftsman. And when you are the greatest of creators and so on. This actually confuses students a lot. Everyone wants to become a master architect. In fact, in schools of architecture, we are always told about master architects and their works. I can hardly recollect any occasion when a very, very ordinary, down-to-earth, simple practicing architect is brought to a school and asked to show his or her work. It is rare. I mean, someone who is just simply designing a building and constructing, asking that person to give a talk about how he designs and constructs buildings, not a very great well-known person. It rarely happens in a school of architecture. So in a school of architecture, practicing architecture is all about playing God, as if you are supposed to become a big master after graduation. Now what happens when you graduate, you become an architect and you come into profession? What happens is that in no time, maybe a year or two, you realize, working in an office or by trying to start your practice, you realize that practicing architecture is actually a business about which you are not taught anything in the school. And you also learn that business is not everyone's cup of tea. You have to have a very acute businessman-like attitude or mind to practice architecture satisfactorily, and also make money out of it. I mean, you should earn out of it. So you sort of, out of school, you realize that practicing architecture is a business, and business is not everyone's cup of tea. So what happens? There are many hundred students like this who graduate, work for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and they start getting into a crisis. You know, for normal people, there is something called middle-age crisis. But for architectures, fresh architects, I believe much before the middle-age crisis, a crisis starts. That crisis of realizing that why I am not able to set up my practice, why I am not getting enough money from the office where I am working, not enough to survive. It's a fact. You ask any graduate who has worked for 2 or 3 years in an office, is he or she earning enough for survival? Or ask a graduate who has worked in an office for 2 or 3 years, trying to set up an office, trying to get a project. Is it easy to get a project, to set up a project? So over the years, hundreds and hundreds of architects are passing out and coming into the field. And all of them generally start realizing that it is not very easy to set up your practice. And it is not very easy to earn enough good money from the offices where you are working. So then comes George Bernard Shaw. I hope you have heard about this statement from George Bernard Shaw, which says, "Those who can do, those who can't teach." As simple as that. That means if you can't practice, let's go and teach. I mean, this has become a norm especially in our profession. Not only in architecture profession, but in other engineering disciplines also. This has somehow these days become a norm in our country, that if you can't do, join teaching. Then what happens? There comes the biggest danger of all, because when people who can't do join teaching, they develop a new generation of architects who again cannot do. How to do, how to practice, how to get into practice is something which one has to understand. So let's again go back and see what happens after graduation. always we all search for job, employment in small, medium, or large multinational firms. That's what happens to most of us. If you want to stick to architectural practice, there are many people who go into different allied disciplines, but I'm just talking about those who get. So you work in a small, medium, and large multinational firm for at least 5 years. This is my belief that at least 5 years you must work before you decide even to start practicing independently or go for higher studies and research or get into teaching as a profession. But that is not the case which we see these days. Nobody has the patience to wait for 5 years of learning in the profession and then decide to go for higher studies or practice independently. Everyone wants to jump into the bandwagon called teaching or research as soon as you get the degree called Bachelor of Architecture in your hand. And you see so many people joining for master's courses, and some people join as soon as you get a master's degree, join a school of architecture and become a teacher. But as Bernard Shaw said, those who can do, and in fact, that is the reason why there are hundreds and thousands of people without any architecture degree doing things in this country. And they are giving a run for their money to the architects. There are hundreds of engineers who are practicing architecture because they can do. Now, what is this can do which we are not able to train our graduates in? This is something which we have to really understand at undergraduate level. So if you work for 5 years, and that is the time you think in terms of research and higher studies. So higher studies is an initiative. This initiative has to come from you. So how do you get into higher studies, and who should get into higher studies and research as an initiative? This is a question. I believe, this is my belief, that research and higher studies is generally for those people who like to write. Write means not just writing diaries, but really, okay, writing diaries is also fine. Who like to write down their thoughts, their response to what is happening in the environment, who like to really write down things, your raw thoughts about what is happening to your profession, what is happening in your own professional intelligence, and so on. So the initiative to do research and higher studies begins with penning down your thoughts, your raw thoughts, and then taking it forward. I mean, writing down your thoughts is the beginning of desire to go for higher studies and research. If you are not doing it on a day-to-day basis, if not a day-to-day basis, once in a while, if you are not sitting down and putting down your thoughts in a coherent manner, there is no way you can succeed in higher studies and research. This is my belief. I may be wrong, but this is what I believe, that you should be a person who's writing your thought down, because writing is thought crystallized on a piece of paper, which can then be reviewed. What the advantage of writing down your thoughts is, you can always go back and look at it and realize what you thought on about this particular subject once upon a time, and so on. So in our generation, there was a process called writing diaries, personal diaries, which doesn't exist nowadays. People only put updates on Facebook as personal diaries. But writing personal diaries used to be a quality in old timers. And most of these people who could write very well over a period of time tend to become pretty good teachers, because they're always revisiting their thoughts in the past and reviewing them. So this is one important quality. So if you have this quality, I believe you are good material for as a researcher. So next step is again to look at what others have thought about, or what others are thinking about your thoughts. See, the advantage of writing down your thoughts leads you to search for references or of other people, how other people think about the same things that you keep thinking about. This leads you to what is known as reading list. Writing alone is not enough. You should be reading a lot. So if you are a person who is continuously writing down your thoughts, naturally you will be led towards reading a lot about your own thoughts, what other people think about, the way, whether people in this world are really thinking about the way you think about a particular aspect of life or about your profession itself. So you should have a reading list. So if you have a reading list, then it leads you to a desire to learn. Having a writing, a desire or activity called writing, and a reading list, you develop a desire to learn, and definitely not earn. You can earn in profession, out beyond research and beyond teaching, can keep earning. But if you want to really learn, you have to stop forgetting about earning, because this is a dedication. This is a field of full of dedication, doing higher studies and research as an initiative. And you have to do it entirely under self-management. You cannot wait for anyone else to tell you what to do next. You have to plan yourself. That is where you have to write down your thoughts. You have to analyze your thoughts, delete what is not applicable to you as your next move, and continue ahead. You have to do it entirely yourself. Higher studies and research is an initiative for which you have to take the full responsibility. So I will now talk about was not happy in practice. I was quite happy, though the practice part was quite boring, because you are doing the same kind of things again and again. It's not always that you keep getting a fantastic project every other day to work on. You become repetitive, and sometimes there is boredom. But one reason that took me to higher studies and research was the non-availability of good books. Personally, because books were very expensive those days, and it was not easy to keep purchasing books. So I went in search of schools of architecture libraries where I could get good books. That's the reason I started teaching and got into teaching as a part-time activity while practicing as an architect. So there are 3 stages of higher studies: before, during, and after. I will talk only about the before part. During and after, I'm sure you can discover yourself if you decide to go into higher studies. Those who are attending this webinar, you decide to go for higher studies and research, you will discover yourself what happens during and after. I will talk about what happens before the before stage of higher studies. See, you have to ask yourself some simple questions. Earlier I said, do you write? Do you read? Do you have a good collection of books related to your thoughts? Do you regularly write? This was one question I asked. The next question to be asked, you can ask yourself is, are you articulate? By articulate, I mean, can you speak without looking at anything? Can you read your own thoughts and talk with coherence continuously from one thought to the other? This is a very, very important quality that you should have. Not ever looking at a piece of paper or a note and talking, have the note in your mind, what you want to speak in your mind. That is articulation. You are continuously expressing yourself without breaking a thread of the argument to people before you. It could be one individual before you, it could be a classroom of 30, 40 people. That is one quality you should have if you want to be a researcher, and especially a teacher, because a teacher has to be a person who doesn't lose thread of his or her thought. This is again my belief. When a teacher speaks, he or she should not refer to anything. They should refer to only their mind. So without losing the thread of argument, they should be able to express themselves in a very articulate manner. So if you don't have this quality, cultivate this quality. And that is done by presenting paper before scholarly audience. So the moment you decide to do research and become a teacher, the first step that you have to take is try to attend conferences, speak before audience with good articulated thoughts. So how many times have you presented a paper before a scholarly audience? This is something which you have to ask yourself. How many times have you stood up and asked questions in a scholarly gathering? Now, you may have never stood up in your 5 years of career in a BArts while doing BArts in a classroom. Maybe you're always a backbencher, somehow attending classes and going home. You may have never stood up and asked a question, even if you had several doubts. If you don't have the habit of standing up and asking a question, come on, you cannot do research. You cannot become a teacher. You should have this habit of standing up and asking questions. You may be asking a stupid question, but you should have the courage to ask a stupid question. So then the next is, do you have a substantial library of books and journals in your discipline? This is another question you should ask. If you want to do research in a particular field in architecture, you should look at your library. Do you have a collection of books? If not, start collecting those books. You can't do PhD research or masters by using Google Brother as your reference. That's not right. You need to have your own collection of journals and books, a substantial library of journals and books. And the other issue, if you have all of this, then you can easily enter the knowledge domain and search for what it is exactly that you want to do research about. In the universe of knowledge, the subject in which you plan to do research, that is your domain. This domain you will have to discover yourself, provided you have all of this as a backup, a capacity to speak well, capacity to write very well, a good collection of books and references on the topic in which you want to do research. Now we are getting into little complicated way of looking at research as an activity. I will not dwell upon this topic for long. I'll just speak very briefly on this, because you will have to discover this yourself. In this domain of research, of the domain that you identify as the topic in which you want to work, you have to pin down or narrow down a singular aspect or issue of your subject in which you do detailed research. You have to convince yourself that this is something which I really want to explore, which nobody has done before. That will be a good contribution to your profession. Now, this was not there in 70s and 80s in the architecture profession. Now, when you look at it, architect Leena Kumar wonderfully ended with a question that why aren't we talking about Indianness in the architecture that we practice? If you really look at the possibility, there are thousands and thousands of varieties of narrowed down topics which are available to us in our country, with which we can establish what is Indianness of architecture in India. So you have to do a search for this, and this can be done by evaluation, synthesis, analysis, application, comprehension, understanding. So these are the methods which you have to explore to understand. So there are all possible topics around you. You assign yourself a topic, you narrow down to the topic, and finally in the narrowed down topic, which is your domain, you do more and more detailed research. And if you want to do PhD in a particular topic, at least it will take about 2 years for you to really narrow down and understand what you really want to consider as your specialization as a researcher in architecture. And when you do that, by that time, you would be having a large collection of books and journals related to that particular domain. This is essential. And this I'm talking about before even joining an institution to do research or masters. So how to go about? I mean, it's merely collecting. You see that this is a beautiful book, I'm going to buy it, and you keep buying books from Amazon and from roadside and from everywhere, and keep collecting it on your shelf is not enough. Those books have to be read. So how do you read books? Again, you should read each book. I believe you should read each book 3 times. And each time you should give a gap between reading. That means you read one book, put it aside, take another book, read it, put it aside. Keep putting aside the books that you have finished reading. But every time when you read, you must highlight passages and sentences that appeal to you. This is important as a researcher. As a researcher, it is important what you did in school when you were studying. You must remember that you used to underline certain important. Your teacher also would tell you, please highlight what is important. This is a line which is important to be remembered. And usually you by heart that line and go and appear in the examination. That same method comes useful now when you read for research. Read 3 times. Every time you highlight again with a different color. First reading, maybe you highlight things in yellow. Second reading, you highlight things in blue. Third reading, you highlight things in red. So every time you open a book, you know, okay, this is what attracted me the first time when I read this book. This is what attracted me the second time when I read book. So that is a wonderful, color coding is a wonderful way of keeping track of your reading material, because it is from these, and you can assure yourself, I'm giving 100% assurance that all those things which you have not underlined are useless as far as your research topic is concerned. They have not been of any use. That is why you have not highlighted them. So only the highlighted parts in each book that you have read become useful for continuing your research work. Once you have finished reading a book, write down portions which are highlighted. And this again, now comes the research journal or a diary I'm talking about. I told you in the beginning that you can become a researcher only if you have the habit of writing well in your own language. Now here comes this stage of researcher where you finish reading books and write down portions which you highlighted. Please don't copy those portions verbatim into your research diary. You should never copy the sentences the same which is written in the book into your book. Write in your own language. This is where your skill as a writer comes into play. What you have read, when you write it down, write it in your own language, in your own way of expression. because that is the true sign of a good researcher. Don't forget to mark the bibliography. I mean, you have to write where you got this idea from. You have to put it down as a reference. You have to. But once you have done this, and once you have put down in your own words into your research diary the thoughts, you don't need those books ever again. All those books which you have read. I am assuring you of this, because you have got the essence of those books in your own thoughts, in your own words, into your own research diary. This is a process which is part of the before of higher education. Readings can be from books, journals, magazines, internet sources, whatever. But finally, writing it down in your own thoughts, the thoughts of different people into your own research journal is extremely important. And referencing the source is a good practice by a researcher. You can't say that these are my thoughts. If you are inspired by somebody else's thought, please do give those references and jot down your thoughts. Reading should be supplemented. Now, today we live in a world full of media, which was not there during our time. In our time, books were the only source of information. But today you have documentaries, movies, and so much of media available on the internet and YouTube and wherever. So you should also supplement reading with all these medias, documentaries, movies, because you get a lot of information and links by doing this. You get connected with people whom you can meet personally or who can communicate regarding your topic. So supplement your reading material with watching documentaries and movies related to your own topic. And when you meet people like this, do recording, video recording or audio recording of your conversations with them, so that will also become a body of material for your research work. Now, once again, I am going to speak. I will quickly go through this because this is again part of higher research, quantitative research and qualitative research, what to take up as your research domain. It all depends upon, yes.
Can we speed up a bit?
Yes. And that's why I am speeding up from here and I am concluding, because this quantitative and qualitative research is something which you have to decide based on whatever your findings are through your reading and studies. Quantitative, only thing to be remembered is quantitative means you have to have excellent mathematical and statistical skills. But qualitative means you should be able to analyze your thoughts in a very logical manner. So these are all associated with scientific methods of doing a research. Qualitative research these are all scientific methods. I am not delving on this too much. So now I come to the last part of my talk. You see, I am leaving you with this thought by Mr. Albert Einstein. Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. So don't think that it has to be quantitative all the time. Architecture, I believe, is a qualitative research, and it is quality that you have to look for as part of research activity, and it is quality that you demand also as a teacher from your student. So qualitative research, architectural research should be mostly qualitative, I believe. There can be quantitative inputs into these studies, and these are all some diagrams which may help you in understanding the relationship between qualitative and quantitative. A great teacher, Jiddu Krishnamurti, has said this: what is the good quality? This is, I suppose, is the best quality that a teacher can have. A teacher should be able to ask the right question first to himself or herself. And if you can answer that right question to yourself, then you are ready to be a teacher to the rest of the world. This, no other than one of the greatest teachers, Jiddu Krishnamurti, has said this. The solution of a problem lies in the understanding of the problem. Answer is not outside the problem, it is in the problem. So asking the right question to yourself first is the first step towards becoming a teacher. Teaching means all of this. You have to be a supporting person, empowering person, engaging person, caring person, sharing person, reflecting person, nurturing person, and assessing person. All these are the qualities that is expected from a teacher. And of course, again, I am coming back to some statements. Mediocre teacher tells, good teacher explains, superior teacher demonstrates, but a great teacher inspires. So I was talking only about the before stage, and what happens in the during and after stage. You will live happily ever after if you have done the before part very well. If you are well prepared in your journey towards doing research and higher studies, research, and getting into a teaching profession. If you have done good preparation, then I'm sure you will happily live after. Thank you so much. I hope I was audible and visible to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hari. Thank you, Dr. Harimohan Pillai. I got so engrossed in it that the host had to remind me, please come back, moderator, where are you? So thank you for the wonderful
I overshoot. So
No, it's okay. I also
sir,
got carried away.
what to do? Me and my big mouth. I can't help it.
Not at all, not at all. We need, and for all our listeners and Dr. Harimohan Pillai are in the board of governors of our Mysore School of Architecture. So we are in very strong hands on that front. Now, before I move to what I call as generation next, from all of us talked about 70s and 80s, and now we have 2000 on. So before I get on to my next two panelists, I'm going to request our principal, Professor Sapna Shivkumar, to give an insight into what is the whole ethos behind this webinar. Over to you, Sapna.
Thank you, sir. When we started Mysore School of Architecture, it's been 6 years now, and during this time of the year, normally we get lots of students and parents of aspiring to be architects come and ask us, Madam, what is it that is there about this course? Is it good enough? Will my child have a bright future if they pursue architecture? Madam, there's no one in our family who's done architecture. This is the first person, so we have no clue. Believe you me, 25 years ago, when I joined architecture, my parents had the same doubts. So we said we will make use of this situation, which is the pandemic. There's lots of webinars everywhere. So we wanted to bring to the people, students, as well as sometimes the decision makers are their parents also. So we wanted to make it clear to people as to what it entails and what it needs to be an architect. And of course, yeah, so about the profession and what are the other alternatives, we got two people with a whole lot of experience behind them to speak to you all. And the other part is mostly during webinars, it's people who have a lot of experience who are speaking. But what are the about the people who have just come out, who are into the profession of late? So we said, let us have a mix of people who have been in the profession and teaching and research for many years, as well as let us look at someone who has set in foot fairly recently, because their experience also would be different and it would be very, very important. While we have a whole spectrum of, people looking for admission into architecture, we also had our own students and people who are already doing architecture, thinking about their future, masters and specialization, what is the scope. In today's world, what are the newer fields of specialization that exist. So that part of it, we said our newer, the panelists who are younger and more of the 2000s and upwards would answer us. Like I told you, when people come to me or when children do get admitted into BR, when it's a typical question, people say, why did you join architecture? They say, I was good at drawing in school, so I thought this will be. That's a typical answer. Then you have someone else who's come into the course a month and they said, ma'am, if I can't draw, can't I become an architect? Well, that's definitely not true. Even if you cannot. See, drawing is a medium of expressing your thoughts on paper, similarly as writing is. Today, with digital tools, you don't have to be a great artist to become an architect, but you need to know to use these tools to express your thoughts, because that is when someone else outside will know what you are thinking about. So that is very, very important. Uh, just for the ones who are aspiring to be architects, like Harimohan sir mentioned, it is the Council of Architecture, which is the appellate body, which sort of regulates architectural education in our country, and they have found what is so different about architecture. Like I told you, 25 years back, 30 years back, parents would say, there's no architect in our family. We don't know what this course entails. We've only heard that all night children are drawing. It's a back-breaking course. Even now they're saying the same thing. So demystifying or bringing it to the common people what architecture or architecture studies involves is what this webinar was intended to do. And we plan to do it by getting people with more than 30-35 years experience, and the newer people who have entered the field share their experiences about the profession and what they are doing. Like I told you, for the ones who are aspiring to be architects, getting into architecture, the council has said that there is going to be a aptitude test. Now, architecture, like Ma'am Leena Kumar mentioned, that it's a blend of art as well as technology. It is not art for art's sake. You are designing spaces that have to be inhabited, that have to be experienced, and that have to stand against, you know, the forces of gravity and all that. You can't build castles in the air, they say, no. They have to be grounded. So technologically also you have to you have certain technical skills to be an architect. So it's a blend of both, which is why the council said we will have a separate uh, qualifying exam or an aptitude test uh, to see to it that the incumbent has a good mix of both of these, and which is why that is planned. And following this webinar, we are also planning to have NATA training online for anyone who wants to take benefit of it. This year's NATA will be held on 1st of August and 29th of August. It is going to be held twice. Most of you might have applied for it. The others who haven't, please refer to the NATA website and you will get the details of that. This is about why we wanted to have this seminar. Also joining us are some of our own students of Mysore School of Architecture who are thinking of what they should be doing for their masters. And we have our next panelists, that is architect Noorain and architect Aditya, who have recently, finished their masters from various universities. And I think they will talk in next. I'll hand over to Professor Ramakrishna Rao to introduce Noorain.
Thank you, Sapna. That's good, nice and concise. I take great pleasure in introducing our next panelist, architect Noorain Jan Basha, presently operating out of an international firm called Architectural Wall Systems in Muscat, Oman. And he's been spearheading the design there. Architect Noor is from Anna University and from Chicago. And he is a certified green professional. And in the year 2010, his project, the Caledonian College of Engineering, won the Green Champion Award in the country of Oman. Friends, the new generation architect Noorain. Noor, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, sir. I think you can hear me now. Okay, excellent, fine. Good afternoon to everybody in India. Good morning still here. So 1.5 hour time differences here and there. So it's 10:32. I'm in my office. We started working back. We were closed from almost 3 months because of this COVID-19, but we are back to track now so that our team can start working from office again. We have to start living with Corona now. So that's what I told my team, and almost half of them are back, and we're expecting them, other staff, to come back as soon as possible. To talk about myself, as explained, I have a bachelor degree in architecture from Anna University way back 2008. Then I pursued a Masters of Project Management from Elmhurst University, Chicago. Currently, I'm employed in architectural wall systems. I joined here way back 2009. So this is a city called Muscat, Oman. If you're not aware of Muscat, Oman, it is a neighbor of UAE, Dubai. All right. I'm going to talk about a beautiful topic called overseas opportunities, a new learning. So everybody feels once you study, you will get a job abroad, a job in India where we can get a beautiful salaries. What I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about my own experience on this topic, overseas opportunity, a new learning. Once I finished my architectural course, August 2008 from Anna University, I started my own small office where I was the only employed. As Professor Dr. Pillai said, it's not on everybody's hand to become a businessman. It was same with me as well. It was a learning experience for me. When I started, I was learning. It was two smaller projects. I felt, what am I doing? It's two smaller projects I'm doing. I learned multi-story buildings, skyscrapers, malls, this and that. I'm landing up in making small, some square meters of residential properties. I'm not doing so good. But I was still working hard, making a small money, which was not sufficient at all. Then later during a year, I got opportunity from Dr. Rao, and I landed up in Muscat in his company called Architectural Wall Systems. Until today, it's 11 years past. I'm here. So it's been a successful career. It's been a growth continuous, worked very hard. And one thing I learned from Rao is keep learning, keep learning, keep learning. The more you learn, the more you progress. It's not like that once you finish your degree, khalas, you got a beautiful degree in your hand, you're the God. No, you're not the God. You have to learn. You have to practice more. You have to strive hard. Keep your basics straight. So that is what kept me going on from this past 11 years. And I have been the growing part of this company. We were just 5 staff when we started. And by the grace of God, we are 30 plus today. And we are doing excellent projects. Even during this COVID time, COVID-19, most of the people may be sitting at home doing nothing. But we were really busy. We had no time to eat food also. That much busy and occupied we were there. But economically, we were suffering as well because the clients were not getting paid. They're not having financial resources. So things came to a really halt or slowdown. That's the reason we thought, let's open up, invite clients, invite contractors, start meeting them so that we grow. Coming back to the topic we have over here is during my sustainability is the main source of what I learned during this process. It's been my core from the college days, due to which we did a project called Caledonian College of Engineering way back in 2010. And it came out very beautiful. That time, sustainability was something which was very new. People were not aware of what is sustainability. So we have to train people, teach people. And they always thought it's an expensive work. But we told them, no, it's not expensive. It's payback. You during the period, it pays back. So that is how we were able to convince client. And we did the sustainable educational building for which we got championship award in the green field. All right, so I pursued to do LEED USGBC. It's a green building certification from America. We have in India also. So it's your choice. You want to do it from America or you want to do it from India. You can do it. Because I'm practicing in Muscat, we don't have any governing body of LEED sustainability. So I had to depend on American certificate. But if you as a young architects want to practice, you can take it from India as well. As I told you, during halfway of my professional career, I learned this called stick to your basics and practice basics. It took me a time to learn this, but because we are delivering a speech to you young architects who are listening to this seminar, I rather suggest that from the beginning, stick to your basics. Practice. Keep practicing. The more you practice, the more you learn. So this will keep you in straight paths towards the success. And that is what I'm going to explain you. Current market for architects anywhere in the world or in Middle East, it's not for someone who doesn't know basics. The market is for them who can deliver 6 once you are in the cricket pitch. As a cricket lover, I'm telling you, hit a 6 once you're there. Don't do knocks and try to tell I'm doing. That doesn't work anymore, okay? You're there, do it and deliver your best. So what a young architects must do to do this, all right? Today's development is like you have to learn software. I'm bad in drawing, but because of my software skills, I do beautiful design. So that is what I want to tell. Because you're bad in drawings, don't think that you cannot do architecture. Still, you can do beautiful architecture, beautiful design. So what you have to learn learn AutoCAD for developing 2D plans and drawings. This is very important, all right? Revit Architecture is a beautiful software where you can do 2D plans and 3D modelings together. But this is for somebody who have already learned about architecture. But someone who is going to practice and just to start learning architecture, you must do AutoCAD. So then you have to learn SketchUp or 3ds Max. This is advanced level of building modeling where you have to learn, and it is also must. Then V-Ray rendering. Just modeling is not enough. You have to learn V-Ray rendering to produce high quality of render, which is very important to convince your clients that you have done a beautiful design, and that is what you're going to present it. Finally, the presentation software such as Photoshop and PowerPoint. So once you have produced everything, you have to present it. How you're going to present it? Learning your presentation software. So these are the basics anticipated from any fresher who's coming out of college and a youngster who has just passed out as well. So keep practicing. This software, as I told you yesterday, started, keep practicing. Then that is how you progress further. All right. And now you have good time to learn. So keep learning on this subject. All right. If you're talking about the Middle East where I'm practicing, people will think it's all about arches. It's no more arches, all right? So it's all about modern architecture where people have adapted and embraced over here. If you see Middle East, a lot of beautiful modern architectures are there. So I insist that you also start practicing modern architecture and learn new tools and techniques of modern architecture, like use of glass, use of steel, use of concrete. So we have come away from other technologies which are still we are learning in the college time. So what I suggest is, apart from what you have been taught, learn about modern architecture, learn about new architects. We are on 2020 now. So we are way ahead of the generation what is being presented in the college books. So try to learn about modern architecture. It is very important. Talking about further overseas opportunity in Middle East, Arabs are very friendly people. I'm working in Oman from past 11 years. They're very friendly people, very good to work with. And you will have a very good multicultural like employee staff. We have here like Omanis, Filipinos, Pakistanis, Sri Lankans. So good collaboration of people working together in a very peaceful manner. So we are happy working over here. In Oman alone, there are around 650,000. That is 650,000 Indians living here. It's like being in Oman while working in Muscat is like home away from home. And I look forward for you also to study hard, work hard, and practice softwares and your skills as well. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Noor. So very enlightening, very eye-opening. And without going further, hopefully some questions will come up. I now quickly go over to Principal Sapna and say, please introduce my student, but more your student, Aditya. Sapna?
Yes, sir. I take great pleasure in introducing Aditya Rao. Aditya is a landscape architect with West 8 Urban Design plus Landscape Architecture. He has completed his bachelor's degree from University of Mysore, and after which he has done a Master's of Science in Architecture, Urbanism and Building Sciences at TU Delft. With an annotation in infrastructures from a multidisciplinary background. Presently, he is working for an award-winning firm and he works with teams for projects in different parts of the world on various scales, projects that range from master planning to regional development to streetscapes, parks and landscape design. Previously, he has worked with MS Prabhakar, Bhagwat and Associates of Ahmedabad and Open to Sky Architects. He has about 5 years of experience behind him, and he will tell you all about his experience of how he chose a master's course and why he chose a particular university, what are the different other options that are there in today's times. Hopefully this will be a good forerunner for all of you who are planning masters after your BArch. Over to you, Aditya.
Thank you, ma'am. Firstly, thank you, DSR Rao sir and Sapna ma'am for allowing me to talk. I think it's a great opportunity. I consider myself the closest to all of you guys who are just going to join architecture or studying architecture. I'm maybe a few years here and there away from you. So I encourage you to spend time later to contact me and ask me any questions. I'm going to keep this very short. I joined architecture by chance. I had very little knowledge about it. My dad is a very good conservation architect, well known in the country, and I had no idea about architecture, even though he was in it. I had some inkling. He just told me to go and look at USD, and I fell in love from the first moment when I walked in, when I saw the environment. And I think that's how you can kind of treat architecture, because it's something that you enjoy from either you enjoy from the moment or you hate it. So you really love just the environment, the way of working, and it's very different from the other courses in how you work, how you design, and also I think it's a platform that you consider as a broad environment to join various things. You should consider yourself more a designer than an architect when you join the course. But after I finished the course, I'm going to try and explain what I went through and what it is like to be in the field now as a youngster, and how I'm fresh off my master's. I've finished 1 year experience in West State, and I'm still super young in this field and trying to hold on to the ropes and try to survive. So I'm just going to tell you what it is like till now. After I graduated, I took part in a few competitions in India with my architectural thesis, which was successful to some extent. And after that, I wished to do a lot of different things. So I tried my hands in at least 3 to 4 firms, sometimes even simultaneously. I went to Nepal to do conservation of post-earthquake houses in some villages which were totally destroyed during the earthquake of 2015. And then we went and we documented and we helped in constructing a house in Nepal in a village which had only one house left, with earth construction and bamboo, and using local joints with the help of an architect called Alea Associates. After which at the same time, I was also in Mysore involved with an old graduate of UST, Mrs. Trupti Shah, where I was doing my own little landscape project with them, which was also very nice to see. So there was sustainable reconstruction of post-earthquake, and then there was a landscape project. At the same time, I was also involved working a bit with IHCN, which is the Indian Heritage Cities Network in Mysore, which was restoring a few buildings in Mysore. And that was another form of learning, which was based on conservation architecture. And after that, I was working with Gayatri Namit Verma Associates for a short period of time to kind of get an idea of, it was also related to conservation, but there was also projects which were architecture in this conservation field. And then I spent 1 year working for a small upcoming firm called Open to Sky Architects. So all these little experiences made me realize what I wanted to do. I've been wanting to study landscape architecture from the time I was doing my course in bachelor's. Around the 3rd year, I had already an inkling. I did my thesis in relation to landscape architecture. I did my internship in a firm it's based on its strengths were landscape architecture. And so I had made my decision to kind of study it, but I was also debating how and when and what is the right steps. And I think there's questions, there are many answers. You can just keep thinking on what is good, what is bad, what is the positives, negatives, how the course is going to help you, but you just have to at some point decide what's good for you and do it. So I studied in TU Delft, which was a very international environment. I think there were 3 Dutch students. It's based in Netherlands. And funnily, there were maybe 3 or 4 Dutch students, and the rest of them were all internationals. So it was like a family. And I think in the end, they become like family because you have only them. And so it's a very nice learning environment where everyone's competing to do good work and at the same time helping each other. And so TU Delft, during my course, I joined an internship at Westate, which is a firm that does, as Sapna says, it does landscape throughout the world. It's quite well known for its landscape architecture projects. And it was an amazing experience doing an internship there because I found the working environment to be so different from India, and I enjoyed it. I spent about 4 months in an internship, and then during my thesis, I did my thesis at the same time while worked 2 or 3 days a week in Westate. So I would spend some time on my thesis, and then I would at the same time. And you at the end, you have to take all these extra steps if you want to survive. And I think part of the journey in architecture is that it's not easy. It's not an easy profession. It's you really have to be on the ball, and you never know. It's quite a challenge, but at the same time, it's so much fun because you're in design. You're in a world of design. You're in a world of creation. So you can keep doing, there's so many opportunities that open up. I went into landscape architecture, but the master's course has a broad range of opportunities from furniture, product, big data, virtual reality. I did my thesis with virtual reality as a means to display my thesis. And so you have such a broad range now that you could go into film, you could go into animation. Architecture just exposes a platform for you to explore design in many ways. You can be a musician, and you can be be from a profession of from a background of design and go into music. So I feel like it's something that just gives you step to introduction to how to be creative in a way, but at the same time go into the world of technical architecture. I think I keep my talk short, and if anyone has questions later, they can come back to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya, for your little talk on your experience of masters and working at Amsterdam. I have some questions. So there is a question that says, wanted to get an idea regarding the various opportunities for fresh graduates in BArch, especially in the present situation. I'm assuming this would be the pandemic. So can I ask architect Leena Kumar to take this on, please?
Yes. Yeah. So what are the other choices that you would have apart from architecture itself? Well, if you're a very fresh graduate and if you like writing, the other thing that you could do is you could do architectural journalism. You could do photography. And if you're good in technology, if you like 3D drawings, 3D images, you could also take up, independent assignments for architectural offices to do just 3D drawings or walkthroughs or animation, if that's something that you have liked 3 or 5 years of architecture. The other thing is there's a very small exam that you could pass, and you could also become a green accredited professional where you can be a consultant for green buildings. So I would think these are the things that you could do right after your architectural degree without doing a master's.
Harimohan sir, can you please react to the same question?
We look at today in society, multiple skills have a lot of place, correct? So we all know that doing Bachelor of Architecture course, you get an exposure to multiple type of skills. And this is seen more in institutions which are situated in an engineering college campus. Because in an engineering college campus, you interact with so many other disciplines. And if you have enough number of friends in all other disciplines, you realize that within the architecture domain, there is a possible application of all the other engineering disciplines. And some people become very good in such campuses on computer programming. Though they are architects, they learn computer programming in the company of other students. And this is one emerging field today. The importance of artificial intelligence in built environment is a very important emerging field. And what would an architect do without knowledge of computer programming? Though we have not introduced hardcore computer programming in the curriculum of architecture in any college in India. It is not there even in IITs, in the Department of Architecture in IITs, as far as I know. But today there is a move to introduce artificial intelligence and its importance in the built environment as a subject in architecture school. It should be there, because there are so many avenues which can be opened if you get into that. So technology-based studies, as Leena Kumar said, photography, your hobbies, all these things, you have to do a process of self-discovery actually, as to whether you should really practice architecture or go into any allied disciplines which will help you find your calling in life, So it's not necessary that piece of paper called B.Arch degree, with that you should do only architecture. There are so many other avenues which are possible. But it's once again a process of discovering your own self and asking yourself what you really want to do in life related to the B.Arch degree. For example, filmmaking. Filmmaking is such a wonderful, as an architect, you are so good at visualizing, you could get into set designs and, virtual set designs, gaming, the world of gaming, all these things are open to you, provided you have interest in these fields as a designer. As an architect, you learn design, but then in all these new fields, design plays a very dominant role, be it filmmaking, be it game designing, and whatever. So everything depends upon your interest in life while doing architecture.
Thank you, Hari. I will now, want to go back. There have been loads of questions which have come. I'd like to start. Some serious questions have been asked. Architect Nurain, I'd like to ask you, because this is some relevant issue. The questions are,
Yes, sir.
you can quickly answer. I'll put 3 of them to you.
Right.
What are the possible career avenues after architecture? Number 1, pros and cons of doing masters abroad.
Right.
Yeah, and receiving. So talk about pros and cons of doing masters abroad. And interestingly, the third question for you is, does the world really need architects? I'll post to all the panelists.
Right, so I'll start with one by one about your question. First thing is, like, what are the possible career avenues? They are vast. Okay, it's not only, as we discussed in our webinar, just not architecture. We can do whatever we want being an architect, and be a musician as well. But as an architect, what I did, personal experience is, like, I went into project management as well, because in the degree of architecture, we have learned project management as well as a part of a architect. An architect have to be a very good project manager. So as interest of for me, I did masters in project management. That's the reason I'm an architect plus project manager. So I have a design team who designs beautiful projects, and I have a project execution team who helps me deliver the project as a part of a consultant. So it's just not the architecture. You have a vast avenues to do. All right, pros and cons of doing masters abroad. Only one thing what I feel is, in India, you may not be exposed to international standards. What is there in architecture? Like, internationally, there are beautiful standards of architecture one who does masters abroad, he can learn this international standards as well, and he can get opportunity to work with international firms, and then he can come back to India to train the people around. In India, yeah, in India also you have beautiful degrees of architecture, but it's not so what I feel is that you don't get exposure of international. That's the only difference I feel. Otherwise, it's good to do master either in India or abroad. But if you're well off, yeah, either do it in abroad. All right. Yeah. Talking about the star architects, you should not call yourself a star. You have to call yourself star when you deliver a good to the humanity. So being a sustainable architect, I call myself star because I have delivered something to humanity. Whereas I did first a commercial building which is solar powered in Oman. Okay, first sustainable green college where I delivered a lot of sustainability. And apart from this, do your best to be the star. Don't do a project to become a star. That's
Thank
it.
you,
Thank you,
Noor.
sir.
Thank you. You're becoming a philosopher. It worries me. Anyway, before we go on finishing, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the team of faculty members from MSA who put this whole platform together. Now, the next question, I'm going to come back to Architect Leena Kumar. Leena, there are 3 questions. So I'm going to put them one by one, and I want to lots of people want to get an idea regarding the various opportunities for fresh graduates after BArch. Do architecture students have a good career? Is the career lucrative? So over to you, Leena.
Yeah. Well, I've just about what architects can do right after their bachelor's degree, without doing a master's. But is architecture is it a good career? I think it's a terrific career. I think it's satisfying, and you'll never regret it. It's completely enjoyable. I have enjoyed it over the past 35 years, and I love it. Is it lucrative? Well, to begin with, when you finish your architecture, perhaps not. You're not going to earn such a high salary. But if you stick to it with some perseverance, then it can be very lucrative. And of course, you have to have a certain business sense to it, but it's a slow profession. Unlike, I would say, software, which is, it's just the opposite. I think in software, by the time you're 40, you're perhaps quite burnt out. And in architecture, by the time you're 40, you're really all set to take off. So there's a difference. And well, what would I say? That in terms of whether you say it's lucrative, if you're willing to wait it out, it can be. And when you have money at a later stage, I believe you enjoy it better because you're also doing your job. Of course, that's my personal philosophy, and I know it's not shared by the youngsters. They want it much faster and quicker, but it's lucrative. Yes, if you can wait, it is.
I'm not sure how gadget works. Anyway, now I put the same question back to our principal, Professor Sapna.
Taking this question further, I want to quote an ex-COA president. Same question was asked to him at a webinar, and he said, when parents ask him, will my child be able to have a living after doing architecture and all that? Will he or she get a job? He always used to tell them, don't look at your child getting into a job. The child is creating jobs for others. So that is the advantage of architecture.
Yeah, yes. Thank you so much. Before that, I'd like to welcome Ravindra Gundurao, Aditya's father, one of again our Board of Governor members. The next question, before I go on to Dr. Harimohan Pillai, is for you, Aditya. What is your view on futuristic architecture for the next generation? People talk about futuristic architecture. In my younger days, I remember this architect called Paul Rudolph, who was supposed to be a futuristic architect. Over to you, Aditya.
Sir, although I'm not an expert, what I do see now, especially here and in firms abroad, is that there is a new way of representation. There is a new way of displaying information. There's a new way of acquiring information and also processing it. So there's three ranges. So acquiring, I think we have been limited in India to not much open source data in our field, for the field I am in urbanism and landscape. Global information, satellite imagery, information from maps, and in general, all infrastructure related information is something that's and falls in the range of big data. This is something that has not been there, and then this is gathering information. For processing also it's the same. There is a lot of let's say ways to process data to make it more usable for an architect as a professional, maybe construction, maybe landscape, maybe furniture, anything. We are limited in drawing and just the two-dimensional way of thinking. And I think with respect to new information, there are various softwares to understanding how a system works, how maybe say an arch works, that you don't require a certain material, you pre-produce certain amount of size of panels that make construction easier. And this is just one example. So this is in gathering and processing, and even in visualizing. For example, my thesis involved virtual reality, and I think that's something now that's becoming quite commonplace in most firms. And I think there are a lot of courses that deal with this. If you want to find ways to display and gather and process information, I think architecture has a lot upcoming in the coming years. So there's a lot on offer.
Great, Aditya. Thank you so much. One question which I start with Dr. Harimohan Pillai, and then I'll leave it for everybody also join in. As a professional with 3 years of experience, I would like to be now aware of the alternatives of teaching and research. And a lot of people also have asked about practicing and research together. I've had some experience, but I'm going to open it out to the panelist, Dr. Harimohan Pillai.
Yes, it depends upon what is the experience that you have had in 3 years, which kind of office you have worked in 3 years. It depends on that. Now, for example, in a landscape architect's office for 3 years, I'm sure he or she will know the issues related to landscape architecture research. So you are open to take up that as a field for masters or research and higher studies, or you take your own practice. So everything depends. Supposing an architect after graduation has worked in a very ordinary office which only does municipal approval drawings. There are so many hundreds of offices like this, and many of our fresh graduates go and join such office to make working drawings in an office which does dominant work is to go to municipality and get approval for others and get the projects through. So what would you do after 3 years? Would you join teaching, or would you do research? If you want to do research, then you have to really get into the nitty-gritty of how approvals are done in all these organizations. What is the role of computer programming in the approval process of a project? Have we really, evolved in terms of looking at a project as an activity to be shared amongst various different disciplines? Today Aditya was talking about new softwares, new technologies which are available. We all know that BIM model has come. BIM model people now BIM or building in modeling a field which can be shared. So everything depends upon what you have done. So either you have to be in focus this, whatever you are doing, but it is entirely left to the individual experiencing something in the first 3 years of a career. It's very difficult to predict. You should know what you are doing, and it all depends. You tell me what you are doing, I'll tell you what you can do. Something like that.
Good, good.
Otherwise, it's
Lena,
very difficult.
Lena, would you like to answer this? Would you like
Yes.
to join?
Yes, I would. But before this, I'd like to talk about what you had mentioned about futuristic architecture.
Right.
I think right now India is absolutely poised to, what you would say is futuristic architecture. There could be many aspects of what you call futuristic architecture, but one of them could be, if you're looking at technology, I think by and large as Indians, we are kind of naturally technology inclined. Even if you look at a driver, you look at a maid, they take to the cell phone so easily, they know how to use it, they're really adept at it. And it's always amazed me how with no education, they're just so terrific at it. I mean, they can do things that even I can't do on a cell phone. And so if you have buildings that really, interact with technology, I think it's something that the Indian citizen can very easily relate to. The other thing is, as far as in today's world, there's a lot of talk about sustainability. And, as Indians, as our architecture, we've been sustainable for generations. So this is the exact time for India to come in to look at sustainability in a different way, to look into old forms of architecture and how you can implement it in today's world. And that really is what today you would call futuristic. Anything sustainable is futuristic, and it's a fantastic place. We're just looking for architects, I believe, to fill in that gap and become what is called a futuristic Indian architecture. I mean, I'm not talking it's got to be robots and AI and so on. That's a part of it. Perhaps we're not really ready for it. And maybe it's not really suitable to our culture or to our people because we are a lot of people and maybe we don't need so much of AI. Well, that's a different thing. But other than that, I think we're completely, perfectly poised to get into an Indian futuristic architecture, and we're looking for that space to be filled up. So for young students coming in, it's exciting because it's the world is ready, the country is ready to really come up with something new, something different, something contextual, something cultural. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you, Lena. I'm going to put a question again. I'll start with Sapna. Everybody keeps talking about possible careers and all. Are there possible alternatives that we must bring into at the bachelor's level? And one of the questions which Noor was also talking about was Revit, the 3D modeling and all. So can you throw some light on that, Sapna?
Yes, sir. Today's times have changed. The profession of architecture is getting more and more organized. Earlier, there were small scale offices. Projects were also small scale. So if an architect's office had 20 architects, that would be called a large firm. Today, some firms have more than 200, 300 architects employed with them, and also it's more of a teamwork. It involves engineers, structural engineers, quantity makers, civil engineers, architects, everyone, and they work in teams. So being a team player is very, very important. So your soft skills are as important as your, technical and aesthetic abilities for architecture. In fact, as a college, since we've been teaching for so long, we have seen that I'll use the word star student. Star students, when they go out and practice, they might not have, achieved so much in terms of being successful as a practicing architect. It's the people who are the mediocres in college who have done very well because of this soft skill aspect of theirs. They know how to handle people. They don't have big egos. They can talk to people and say sorry for something. Whereas more the star student is, like that. It's not a standalone profession. You have to learn to work in teams, and it is a very a multidisciplinary team that is happening because the scale of projects is also becoming so large. Okay, so there are options like now courses are being done in such a way that once you reach your higher years, you have a lot of electives, and these electives try to help you take up subjects that you have a leaning towards. We have got electives like conservation. Somebody who's interested in learning about old buildings, what they did, how they were planned. How do we keep them that way, or how do we take it further? There's vernacular architecture, wherein so much of Indianness brought into it. Typically abroad, when they study the history of architecture, they study the history of the rest of the world in a very short period, and they do a detailed study of the architecture of that particular country, which I feel is sort of lacking in our syllabi. So the trust on that, bringing back Indianness, learning about the various philosophies of design, all that is a very important thing. And not to beat the technology part. Again, the world is advancing, technology is advancing, so should we. And we have to remember, but all the while, one has to remember that it is the ideology behind the design and how to think that is more important. Your software is just a tool. Instead of your pen and pencil, you're using the software. Learning to use the software is one thing. But what we are trying to do in colleges, the toughest part is to make students how to learn to think. After 5 years of architecture, if we are successful in making all our students think, then I think we have done something.
Thank you, Sapna. I'm going to start, we have last 7 to 8 minutes for us. I'm going to start with asking Aditya. Aditya, is it nice or correct, or in your experience, to do masters immediately after bachelor's, or should there be a time gap?
That's a very interesting question, sir, because I come here, in India, we have the notion that we must take some time and get some. I did take some time. I took a year and a half, a very short break before doing masters. But when I came here, I noticed that that concept doesn't even exist. People go immediately from bachelor's to masters, or they don't at all. They stick to their profession. And it's very, I was super surprised. I thought that most people spend a lot of time getting to know what they want to do and how they want to approach it. But I wrote down some points on why and how. So I believe that the main point is not the time gap, but like why and what you want to do with the masters when you finish it. I think that's the whole goal of the masters, and it's not the masters itself. Like where do you see that you want to use it after you finish? So what like the whole purpose of this whole webinar, and where do you want to go after it? What do you want to do you want to go from robotics to materialization? Do you want to design bricks which are specifically interlocking? Do you want to go into production? Do you want to be a project manager and manage large multi-layered things which is changing the city? So I think it really depends on how you want to use the masters.
Lina, I have also a point for you. As you add, please also address, there are a lot of queries saying, is it good to be architects who are builders? So please answer both.
Okay, architects who are builders.
Who want to be builders.
Architects who want to be builders. So, I mean, basically you're saying you want to design build.
Design build, exactly.
So design build, well, it is a good thing if you're so inclined to, yes. But that's really a design build firm. It's not purely architectural, because if it's purely architectural, then you're much more creative. You're not thinking about the simplicity of building. But when it's design build, you're combining design also always with how is it easier to build and not so complicated. But design build is certainly a solution, and maybe it's a good solution also, because when architects build, I think there's a certain sense of responsibility and of designing well to the end consumer. It's fine as long as you don't call yourself an architectural practice. I think it's good, and many will go that way, I think.
Okay, great. Noor, architect Noor, The question to you again is it good to do
Yes, sir.
masters immediately after bachelor's?
I rather suggest yes. You know why? Even I wanted to do the masters, right, and end up working continuously from past 11 years, and had to do my masters in project management through online. So if you want to do your masters, go right away. Don't join and think, fine, I will go back and study. It doesn't happen. It's too difficult, to stop your professional practice and go for studies for 2 full years. It's going to be really challenging. So
Excellent.
rather somebody who wants to pursue masters, start from your bachelor's, start preparing for it from your bachelor's, and go towards it, finish it, then start practicing.
Dr. Harimon?
Yes, see, I would like to continue with what Aditya said.
Right.
See, if you look at today's education, it has been like this for years, for ages, 5-year course. But the world has changed. After 5 years, people have to wait to get another degree called master from some other school of architecture. The world has changed. So today is the time to integrate this course. You can give after 5 years a master's degree. Actually speaking, if we do some restructuring of learning, or maybe 6 years, you study for 3 years. Basically, I believe that in 3 years, you learn almost everything required to become a practicing architect. There's nothing more to be done after that. Because after all, what all you learn in 3 years? Building services, building construction and fundamental design, which is required for becoming a practicing architect. So we need to do total restructuring so that this time can be reduced to give a master's degree. You may continue in the school, or you may work part-time and continue and decide this is what your specialization that you want to do in masters, and continue to practice as an architect with some master's degree. Actually, architectural practice can start after master's degree for 5-year course, 5-year integrated course. We should think in terms of 5-year integrated course of masters, and maybe 3 years bachelor's of architecture for not practicing, but 3 years bachelor of architecture, you may become a journalist, you may become a material supplier, but not actually practice architecture. This 5 years, I believe, if possible, we can compress it in design it in such a manner that it becomes an integrated master's course with a license to practice, provided you do your specialization within these 5 years. And for this, institutions will have to try, Council of Architecture will have to try, do brainstorming on introducing this kind of 5 years or maximum 5+1 years to complete in one shot a course which gives you a master's degree. So many specializations are possible today. So many specialized. See, have you ever thought of supply chain management of building materials for a particular project using BIM model? Nobody is thinking about it. People do it in big corporate builders, companies. These kind of thoughts are there. But supply chain management of building materials required for a particular project, this can be a important subject at 4th year level or 3rd year level. Understanding the nuances of supply chain management, of material building, getting building materials to a site in time for continuous proper in-time project management. So there are so many issues which we can address by sort of integrating this 5-year course into a 5-year or maybe at the most 6 years and master's degree. And
Excellent.
since council is in planning, since
I'm
council is
sure-
already planning to, sir,
I'm-
since council is
yeah.
already planning to introduce licensing exam, this will be the right way actually.
Excellent, because this is going to be cheerful news for the young graduates who are going to come. I mean, youngsters who are going to join. We are running short. Time is over. So I thank you all panelists so much. I thank Professor Sapna, my team from MSA, and it's been excellent. And if I had known that it's going to be so many questions, we could ask for another hour more. But then that would have gone away into lunchtime. So thank you all once again. Leena, for sparing time on Sunday. Dr. Harimon Pillai, Noor, who is working, Aditya, who is
Thank
on
you,
a
sir.
holiday, and all those people who registered and came forward. Thank you all so much and wish you all the best during this period.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of the faculty, the management, the students of Mysore School of Architecture, I take this opportunity to thank all our panelists. It's been very nice that you spare your Sunday morning for us, trying to share your thoughts on the profession and the master's courses that are associated with it. For anyone who has a different query, you can please feel free to write to us and we shall answer that. And again, I want to reiterate that for the students who are aspiring to join architecture, that is the BArch course, we are conducting an online NATA coaching this exercise, which our faculty will be involved in. And we will send you the details regarding this, and you can please respond to that. Yeah, thanks a lot. I thank my team consisting of architect Priyanka, Sandeep, Mahant, and Sanket, who have been working hard for this to happen. Our technical expert Webnock. We have with us our support team of Mr. Sunil and Mr. Satish, who are also there on a Sunday. And before I leave, I just want to bring some more Indianness, and just a reminder that today is International Yoga Day, and I leave you with the thought of getting back to our roots to get into better health. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I thank all the participants also for being actively involved in this. Thank you.